Okay, we are going to start on Jeremiah today. Um, Jeremiah is the largest of the major prophets in terms of volume or just the number of pages. Isaiah's got more chapters, but if you just count number of verses or number of pages, Jeremiah is the largest of them. Did anybody know what other book Jeremiah wrote? He's the only prophet that actually wrote two books for the Bible. Would it help if I reminded you that Jeremiah is referred to as the weeping prophet? Lamentations. Yeah, that's also his. Um, now, of course, we always, we always try to talk about the plan, the historical background, all those types of things. Jeremiah, there's no plan to Jeremiah. He's kind of all over the place. There's no logical sequencing. There's no chronological sequencing to it. Um, Jeremiah is a book that is full of what are called symbolic acts. We would call them object lessons probably today. None of the prophets we've studied so far have really done this. Hosea comes pretty close to it because that whole book is kind of like an object lesson. Um, and what I mean, again, what I mean by that is that he acted things out in a manner to make a point and to show a point to Judah, and you'll see he was talking to Judah. We'll see many of those acts as we go through the book, and what I'd like us to come away with when we get through studying Jeremiah is an understanding of at least some of the just the greatest symbolic acts that he does. You'll see, and I think I mentioned this last week when we were kind of introing this a little bit. There's a lot of history and a lot of action built into Jeremiah. It's not like Isaiah where he kind of just stops prophesying and has this interlude where he's given some historical background. But Jeremiah talks about the stuff that's happening to him a lot. That's part of how he builds in these symbolic acts. Okay. So chapter 1 of Jeremiah is his call. And in chapter 1, we'll see a couple of symbolic acts. They happen in a vision, so that's a little different than him actually acting things out, but it's the same general idea. Now, I'm going to give you some homework for next week. I'd like you to read 4 chapters of Jeremiah. I'd like you to read chapter 1, chapter 13, and chapters 18 and 19. That's 4 chapters. You might want to read one a day because, like I said, Jeremiah is not a book that grabs you. And most people won't read Jeremiah, to be honest with you. It's probably one of the least read books in the Bible. Lamentations may beat it, but it's just not a book people are drawn to for some reason. 1, 13, 18, and 19. Okay. There are also several great sermons in Jeremiah. So let me ask you a question. What do we call the second part of our Bible? The New Testament. Jeremiah calls it the New Covenant. Jeremiah is the one who introduces that idea. Okay. So let's start at the beginning, like we do. So if you look in chapter 1 of Jeremiah, the first 3 verses, it says, the words of Jeremiah, the son of Hilkiah, of the priest who were in Anathoth in the land of Benjamin, to whom the word of the Lord came in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, in the 13th year of his reign, which was, I'll help you out there, that was in 627 BC. It also came in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, until the end of the 11th year of Zedekiah, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, until the carrying away of the Jerusalem captives in the 5th month. That's the 5th month of the 11th year of Zedekiah. That's in 586. Okay. Now, let me go over here. I want to talk about this timeline for a minute. I want to make sure you can see what I'm making reference to. Okay, so here's Jeremiah. Now, again, these numbers that are up here and down here both, you're talking about something that happened 2,500 years ago. So sometimes if you do any research, these numbers will shift a year or two. But this is really, really close, if not exactly right. These first 3 verses say that his ministry started in the days of Josiah. Okay, here's Josiah, the son of Ammon. So Josiah started his reign in 640. So Jeremiah started in the 13th year of his reign, which would be 627. Okay. And it progressed until progressed until the 11th year of Zedekiah, who he also identifies as the son of Josiah. Okay, so there's a couple of strange different things in that little paragraph. Number one, he tells us something that no other prophet has told us. All the other prophets say, well, I prophesied during Hezekiah, and I prophesied during this, and I prophesied during that. But he says, I started in the 13th year of Josiah, and I went until the 11th year of Zedekiah in the 5th month. Now, that's really specific, okay? And it's important. Anything in the Bible is important, right? But this is different because the other prophets don't get this detail. And it's really important to understand why I think he got detailed like that, okay? First off, if you pick up here in the middle of Josiah, and he mentions Jehoiakim, who is this guy. He skips Jehoahaz completely. That doesn't mean he wasn't prophesying. Maybe he wasn't. But Jehoahaz was only king for 3 months. Okay. So he mentions Jehoiakim, and then he skips Jehoiachin, who, by the way, also only reigned 3 months. And then he gets to Zedekiah. And Zedekiah was put in place. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but Zedekiah was put in place by Nebuchadnezzar. Okay. Normally, this person would have been, you would think, would have been the son of Jehoiachin, but he's actually Jehoiachin's uncle. Okay. He is Jehoahaz's brother. Okay. So that's, again, normally in the line of kings, it's, father, son, grandson, great. But this breaks, it goes back up to the tier right under Josiah. Okay. So let's talk about the timeline for a minute. During Josiah's reign, Jeremiah started his prophecy in 627. Okay. In 612, a few years after that, the Babylonians paired up with the Medes. And we normally, anyway, we paired up with the Medes, and they conquered Assyria. Okay. So that happened shortly after Jeremiah started his prophecies. A few years later, in 605, so now we're down here in Jehoiakim, the Babylonians have a knockdown, drag out fight with the Egyptians. Okay, that was a draw. Both sides lost a lot of soldiers, but it was not a decisive battle at that point. That was the same year, by the way, that Nebuchadnezzar became the king of Babylon, was in 605. Okay. Also in 605, I guess Nebuchadnezzar is going to strut his stuff here a little bit. Babylon invaded Judah. Okay. So all that's happening here, which is during the prophecy period that Jeremiah was doing. Right. In 605, you see the first wave of the deportation of the Jews into Babylon. Okay, that's the one Daniel and his three buddies were in. Okay. All that's happening in that 1 year of 605. So Daniel's taken captive, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are taken captive. Um, so Daniel, especially you ladies that are studying Daniel, that's when all this started, right? Nebuchadnezzar had just become king. They invaded Jerusalem. They didn't get a lot of fight out of Jerusalem or Judah, and they captured Jerusalem. And they took, in that first wave, they took what you call, like I say, the pick of the litter. Um, they took young men from the royal families. Okay. Now, in 601, which is still during the reign of Jehoiakim, Babylon takes another crack at Egypt. Okay. Again, a lot of losses on both sides. Babylon kind of won, but it wasn't like a decisive win. All right. Now, in that same year, 601, I guess because Babylon didn't really conquer Egypt, it kind of, again, fought to a standstill. I think Babylon got a little bit of an edge there, but they didn't really win. Jehoiakim thought, oh, we need to buddy up with Egypt because Egypt just kind of fought Babylon to a standstill so they can save us. One of the prophecies, or one of the things we'll read in Jeremiah, is Jeremiah telling Jehoiakim, do not do this. Okay. But Jehoiakim went ahead and did it. Again, this is a 601. So in 597, which is right here, the dividing line between these two kings. The reason that's the dividing line between the two kings is Nebuchadnezzar said, you did what? And he came in and reasserted himself in Jerusalem, removed Jehoiakim from being king, and put Jehoiachin in place. Okay. Now, at that point, Babylon is in complete control of Jerusalem, right? Prior to that, they'd taken some captives, but Jerusalem was still kind of Jerusalem, right? Now it's part of Babylon. That also was when the second wave of deportations happened, when they took the second bunch of people into Babylon. Who was in that second wave? Ezekiel, the prophet we're going to talk about eventually. We'll get to him. Okay. So all that happens right there. But again, Jehoiachin it only reigns for 3 months. And then Nebuchadnezzar removes him, puts Zedekiah in place. Again, Zedekiah was Jehoiachin's uncle, his father's brother. Ezekiel's ministry begins right here. Okay. That's when he starts to prophesize. A few years later, Zedekiah rebels against Nebuchadnezzar and Nebuchadnezzar comes in and burns the city to the ground. Takes Zedekiah captive, blinds him, takes him away in the third and final wave of deportation. Okay, they left. The only people they left in the back were the folks they just flat didn't want. You know, just the poor people. And they, if you go back and read the history of all that, they assigned the poor people to stay there and work the land. Okay. And then some of those people rebelled and that didn't go very well either. Right. So in 586, which is down here, that's kind of cut off on the end. But in 586 is when the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, tore down the walls, and took the rest of the folks captive. That was 586. Okay. So Jeremiah's prophecies run all the way through that. Now, actually, the prophecies in the book go a little bit beyond that. It's just that the prophets always kind of registered themselves against the kings, and the king's gone. 586 was the end of Judah. There was no more kingdom of Judah at that point. It was finished. It's never been reestablished. Israel's there today, but it is not a kingdom. Okay. So 586, well, you cannot, I don't think we cannot, as Americans, understand the impact that that would have had on those people. Right? 500 years or so, they had been in that land, right? They'd had their ups and downs. You know, they'd been chastened and restored and back and forth. Like you look at the judges and some of the stuff that went on with Saul and all that. But it always had the kingdom. Not anymore. It's gone. By the way, something people overlook a lot. We refer to the southern kingdom as Judah, and we talk about it. That's why, by the way, we call them Jews. That while they were in Babylon, the Babylonians got tired of referring to them as the tribe of Judah, and they shortened it to Jew. And that's where that term comes from. But there's another tribe down there too, tribe of Benjamin. So Benjamin and Judah were down there. But Benjamin, you remember what Saul said? I'm the least person in the least tribe, you know. So Benjamin was a small tribe. Judah was a big tribe. And so anyway, they just kind of refer to it as Judah. In Jesus' time, they refer to it as Judea, but it's the same part of land, basically. So you have Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, you have the tribe of Judah, and then there are Levites still in that area as well. So it's really not just the tribe of Judah that was taken captive. Okay, so what's unique? I know you get tired of me saying that every time we talk about a prophet. Oh, this was unique, you know. But there is something unique about every one of them. So what's unique about Jeremiah? What do we see in those three verses? I've mentioned a couple of things. Number one, he gives us the detail of the years that he's ministering. What else is unique here? Jeremiah says something that we haven't seen yet. He's a priest, right? We've had shepherds and sycamore pinchers and royalty. Basically, Isaiah was part of the royal family, we think. Jeremiah's a priest, okay, from a town in Benjamin, which was kind of the western part of that area, right? Now, when we talk about the Assyrian crisis, we talked about the great Assyrian prophet that was Isaiah. So Jeremiah is the great Babylonian prophet. He prophesied through the entire time of the captivity up until they were well into the captivity. Okay, so let's talk about the rest, some more of the history. So are these kings here Josiah, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, and Zedekiah, are those good kings or bad kings? And by that, I mean, are they following the Lord or not? You know, Jeho, Josiah was what followed the Lord with his whole heart. Okay. But I mean, I'll add a little bit to your homework assignment. If you read 2 Kings 22 and 23 and read 2 Chronicles 34 and 35, it tells you all about him. He followed the Lord. He started reigning. His dad Amon was an evil king, and when he was killed, and he was killed, murdered, the people then took his son Josiah and put him in place. He was 8 years old. Okay. The Bible says in Kings and Chronicles that he followed the Lord. Okay. In his 12th year, so he was 20 at that point, he started a purge of all the false priests, the ones who were worshiping other gods. And he didn't just kill them. He killed them, he burned them, he ground their bones to powder, and then he sprinkled the powder out over the land and stuff. So he was, you would feel like, pretty dedicated, right? In the 18th year of Josiah's reign, he was having them fix the temple, because under the previous kings who had not followed the Lord, the temple had gone into, number one, it had been wasn't maintained, but they had been offering sacrifices to other gods in there, and so he had the priests and the Levites go through and clean stuff out, and he issued an edict about giving money to the carpenters and the masons, and he sent one of his envoys to the temple with a message about the money, if I remember right. And the guy came back and said, "Hey, we found this book." They found basically the Pentateuch, the book of the law, first 5 books of the Bible. And so Josiah said, "Oh, let's read it." And they started reading it, and Josiah just tears his clothes and starts crying. He's like heartbroken over how far that nation, the Jews, have fallen from God, and that he sees God's wrath on them because of that. And so he asked a prophet that was a female prophet, a prophetess, about it, and she tells him it's coming. Judgment is coming, but because you sought the Lord with your whole heart, God is going to hold it off until you're gone. And so for the rest of Josiah's reign, and when you get in again to Jehoahaz and the rest of them, it kind of reminds me of like the Roadrunner cartoons or something. And so there's a safe or a piano tied with a rope up here, and they're all underneath it, and they're just waiting for the thing to fall on their head. I can't imagine that'd been a whole lot of fun for any of them, because Babylon's already starting to strut their stuff here a little bit. We've already had prophecies that were issued earlier about Babylon going to come in. Back in Hezekiah's time, Isaiah issued some prophecies about Babylon. Okay, so again, you've got one good king, and then straight downhill after that. The rest of them did not follow after the Lord at all, let alone with their whole heart. Okay, so these are bad days. In Josiah's time, it wasn't real bad. But again, you're starting to see Babylon mobilize. And then as you got into the J's there, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, and Jehoiachin, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Okay. So again, we see actual years, and in one case, the actual month these things happened. And again, that's different. He's a priest. That's different. He is talking to Judah because Israel's not there anymore. The Assyrians took him away. So the only people he has left to talk to is the southern kingdom, which again we call Judah, but it was Judah and part of Benjamin was there. Now, it's really important for us, I think, to understand the man, Jeremiah, the man, because again, his messages are different because there's so much of him in them. Some preachers and some teachers never put themselves in the message. That's not true of our pastor, right? A lot of his messages circle around his experience, right? And like I said, so some do it a lot. Pastor does it a lot. Some don't do it at all. And I'm not saying either one is good or bad. It's just different depending who the pastor is or who the teacher is. Jeremiah just weaves himself into everything in this book. Okay. Something is always going on with him, and he includes that in his writings. Isaiah never does that. Isaiah never mentions anything about himself other than I saw the Lord, And after that, none of the messages are about him. Jeremiah is the other end of the spectrum. A lot of the messages are about things happening to him. Okay, we know the location and the timing of Jeremiah's ministry. We know his occupation. He wasn't a shepherd like Amos. He was a priest. And that's the first one we see. There's another one we'll get to later, but he's the first one we've seen so far. Jeremiah talks about the temple a lot. He was a priest, right? Now, where you come from has a lot to do with where you go, right? And so Jeremiah coming out of the temple as a priest, a lot of his examples and conversations wrap around the temple. If you look at it at verse 6 in chapter 1, we read this. Then said I, Jeremiah, Ah, Lord God, behold, I cannot speak, for I am a youth. Now, the word youth, when we say youth, we're talking teenagers, basically, right? That word really means a child, sometime from birth to adolescence. So what's that, 12, 11, 12 is adolescence. Now, I don't think he literally meant, Lord, I'm only 8 years old. I can't do this. Because he was a priest already. He says he was a priest. So you can't really be a priest. You don't serve as a priest until you're 30 years old. They serve from 30 to 50. So he was at least 30. I think what he was saying is that when it comes to speaking, I'm like a child, right? Who else said something like that? Moses. Moses like, blah, blah, blah. And God's like, okay, Aaron will be your mouthpiece, He didn't give Jeremiah an outlet like that. He just told Jeremiah, nope, you're going to do it. I'm going to be with you. You're going to do it, right? So again, he's kind of, I think, saying I'm not good at public speaking. Not priests didn't necessarily preach a lot. I mean, that's not a priest wasn't like what we see priests today. They did stuff. They took care of the sacrifices and all that. So that easily could be that he just wasn't used to public speaking or anything. Right? So Jeremiah is very different from Isaiah, and he's very different from Ezekiel as well. Again, when we get to Ezekiel, they were tremendous orators. We talked in Isaiah about his vocabulary and how eloquent his speaking was and how the big words he used and all that kind of stuff. Jeremiah is not like that. Jeremiah is like a country boy. He just tells it like it is, uses little words. And I'm not knocking him. That's just who he is. But he's just very, very different from Isaiah. And again, we'll see the same thing when we get to Ezekiel. Not to the point of Isaiah, but a similar thing. Okay. Now, what do we take from that? We don't have to be a great orator for God to use us. God used everybody. If you're willing to be used, God will use you. So look, skip ahead a little bit to chapter 4, verse 19. This is going to give you a little bit of insight of why we call Jeremiah the weeping prophet. He says, "Oh, my soul, my soul." Literally, that's my intestines, my intestines. Right? And that sounds weird, but when you start to get upset, what starts to hurt first? It's your gut, right? You get that feeling, That's what he's saying. Really not soul, it's really the abdomen area of the body. He says, "I am pained in my heart. My heart makes a noise." That word is pounding in me. Do we think he's having palpitations at this point or something? No, I don't think that's it either. I think his heart just like breaking inside. It's just tearing him up. He says, "I cannot hold my peace because you have heard, O my soul, the sound of the trumpet, the alarm of war." Now, this guy a few verses ago was saying, I can't talk. Now he's saying, "I can't hold my peace." Okay. I think God's at work here, right? So does Isaiah ever talk like that? You never see anything like that out of Isaiah. Hosea, yeah, you saw him bare his heart in his writings a little bit. Chapter 8, verse 18. "I would comfort myself in my sorrow. My heart is faint within me." Okay? Again, he's showing you the pain he's feeling. Chapter 9, verse 1. "Oh, that my head were waters and my eyes a fountain of tears, that I might weep day and night for the slain of my daughter, of the daughter of my people." The weeping prophet. He wants his head to be a bowl of water and his eyes fountains. That way he could just cry all the time. Okay. Chapter 11, verses 18 and 19. "Now the Lord gave me knowledge of it, and I know it, for you showed me their doings. But I was like a docile lamb brought to slaughter, and I did not know that they had devised schemes against me, saying, let us destroy the fruit with its, the tree with its fruit. Let us cut him off from the land of the living, that his name may be remembered no more." What are they talking about? They're getting ready to kill Jeremiah. Okay. Chapter 18, verse 18. "Then they said, let us devise plans against Jeremiah, for the law shall not perish from the priest, nor counsel from the wise, nor the word from the prophet. Come and let us attack him with the tongue. Let us not give heed to any of his words." What's that talking about? They're going to slander him. They're going to try to make everybody stop listening to him. Okay. And none of that worked apparently, because in chapter 38, verse 6, it says this. "So they took Jeremiah and they cast him into the cistern." Some translations say dungeon. It's a cistern. It's a hole in the ground that caught rainwater. Okay. It's in the court of the prison. And they let Jeremiah down with ropes. They didn't just toss him down, because these things tend to be kind of deep. They lowered him down, but there's no water. The thing is empty, except at the bottom, there's mud, and he sank down into that. Okay. This is Georgia. We have miry clay here. Oh, if you've ever tried to cross a creek or something, if the clay is exposed, you hit that, you're going down. There's nothing you can do to stop, right? So this is not clay necessarily, but it's mire. Okay. So he sinks down into that. I mentioned, we were talking about one of the other prophets, that folks tried to kill Jeremiah for prophesying against the temple, against Jerusalem, and the king stopped him. Okay. And he pointed out, well, wait a minute, this other prophet said that, you didn't kill him, so And you'll see as we go through this book that Jeremiah's book that the king intervenes and saves him out of the cistern. Right. A couple more verses and we'll be done. Chapter 12, verse 1. This is interesting coming from a prophet. Righteous are you, O Lord, when I plead with you. Yet, let me talk to you about your judgments. So in one respect, he's saying, you're right, but I really want to bring something up here, right? Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why are those happy who deal so treacherously? In other words, okay, why am I in a pit in the middle of nowhere and they're up there having a party, right? So even prophets kind of sometimes go, Chapter 15, verses 15 through 18. O Lord, remember and visit me and take vengeance for me on my persecutors. In your enduring patience, do not take me away. Know that for your sake I have suffered rebuke. Your words were found and I ate them. And your word was to me the joy and rejoicing of my heart. For I am called by your name, O Lord God of hosts. I did not sit in the assembly of the mockers, nor did I rejoice. I sat alone because of your hand. For you have filled me with indignation. Why is my pain perpetual and my wound incurable, which refuses to be healed? Will you surely be to me like an unreliable stream, as waters that fail? See, again, he's saying, I did this, I did this, I did this. Are you going to let me down? Again, that's coming from a prophet in particular. I think that resonates, should with all of us, because I think all of us at some point in time are thinking, why is this happening to me? Like Job. Job's like, I haven't done anything wrong. Why is all this calamity falling on my head? And then the capper to me is chapter 20, verse 14. He says, cursed be the day in which I was born. Let not the day be blessed in which my mother bore me. He didn't say happy birthday to me. He said cursed birthday to me. Today, what do we say? I wish I was dead. I wish I'd never been born. That's how bad things have got. And as we read through this, we see the things happening to him. You kind of go, yeah, I understand a little bit. Because he really, I think of all the prophets, he really suffered the most. And that includes Jonah being in the well for 3 days. He really suffered the most and for the longest period of time. They tried to kill him. They slandered him. They disrespected him. They threw him in a pit. Okay. He eventually fled the country after Zedekiah was removed. And went to Egypt. We'll get to all that later. Okay. Yeah, it was the folks in Judah that were persecuting him. It was the other priest and the executives, the royalty, because he was speaking against them. He was speaking against them and against the temple, and they weren't having that, And so they tried to kill him, and they couldn't kill him. So they tried to slander him and have him disrespected by the people, and that didn't work. And so again, they threw him in a pit. They weren't going to kill him. They're just going to let him starve to death down there. So we didn't do anything. Kind of like Joseph's brother. Oh, we didn't kill him. We just sold him into slavery. Like not on our hands until the end. They realized, whoops, yeah, it is. So Jeremiah, again, of all the prophets, really, really had a tough life and a tough ministry. And even though he kind of questioned God occasionally, like we saw, he really never deviated from his mission. He kept doing what God told him to do. And again, I think that's something we can hold on to is even if we're not seeing results, even if things are going badly for us, if we are doing what God wants us to do, we just got to hang with it. We just got to keep doing it. Okay. God takes care of the results. He takes care of the chastisement. He takes care of the rewards. All that's in his hands, not ours. We're just supposed to obey in the spirit of the Lord.